Would you like a jelly baby? Great Britain. We love sweets. We're very good at making them and eating them, and we'll go far and wide to really find the good stuff. Unless, of course, that's chocolate made in America. You can't convince me anyone actually likes Hershey's. That stuff's like chewing on drywall. Come on, get real for a minute.
You think you can just shoot me?
They're Americans!
Don't shoot, definitely no shooting.
But how did this love affair with sugar start? Well, before the Industrial Revolution in the Victorian era, sweets were something really only for the upper classes. But with the explosion of technological advancements and towns becoming increasingly more crowded, sweet shops began to crop up everywhere. And for the first time, the great unwashed, the working man, could get his hands on the good stuff. They even started making sweets for children.
Anything off the trolley, dears?
We'll take the lot.
You really are a fat bastard.
It was this advent of mass production that made it possible to make vast quantities of sweets and sell them nationwide. And then, in 1879, a Frenchman confectioner waltzed into the country. Now, normally, anything French is to be treated with extreme suspicion, but this chap, Claude Gaget, brought with him the recipe for the Pastille, a popular French sweet that he took straight to Rowntree, one of Britain's biggest sweet manufacturers. Now, the recipe has never been made public, but the Pastille, or pastel in different fruit flavours, became and remains one of Britain's most favourite sweets. So, naturally, I'm turning it into a cocktail. Now, of course, because the fruit pastel comes in a tube with all kinds of different flavours, that wouldn't really be possible to represent that all at once in the same cocktail, so the version I'm going to make, whilst tasting like a fruit pastel, more reminds me of like those fruit pastel lollies you get, where you get sort of a lick with all the different flavours all in one. This is naturally going to be a shaken cocktail, and we are naturally going to want to start with some gin. I'm going to use this James Gin London Drizzle, as it has a very subtle beetroot umami note that I think will go very well in the fruit pastel, that does sort of have that umami aftertaste from the gelatin. Now, because I want to get so many different fruit flavours in here, I'm going to be working off sort of like a last word variational riff. We want ½ an ounce of some cherry liqueur, cherry herring if you can get it, or this lovely De Kuyper cherry brandy liqueur. We want ½ an ounce of Cointreau. You're going to want ½ an ounce of a rhubarb and ginger gin liqueur. This is something that I feel like every British household has a bottle of in their cupboard. I feel like this is one of the most common gifts to get around Christmas time for some reason. ½ an ounce. We are going to want ¼ an ounce of a Crème de mûre, which is a blackberry liqueur. And ¼ an ounce of Passoa, passion fruit liqueur. Now, I know that is a hell of a lot of fruit liqueur flavours to be going on here, but I found that's the combination that really works to really get that fruit pastel ice lolly flavour. But I found what it does need is just another want ounce of simple syrup, because after all, we are replicating a sugary sweet here. We are then going to need ½ an ounce of lemon juice. Always want to do freshly squeezed if you can. And ½ an ounce of lime juice. Now, I know that is a lot of ingredients, and mercifully, we are done with the ingredients for now, but it's definitely necessary and worth it for this cocktail. So we're going to add some ice, and we're going to shake. Beautiful colour. Then I want to take a rocks glass, give it what it calls for, just a couple of large rocks if you got them, and double strain. Now, one idea I did have was to do a sugared rim on this cocktail. As it so happens, before I started shooting, I forgot to get my sugar. So if you have a sugared rim, that's definitely worth doing here. However, I am also, in addition, going to do just a couple fruit pastels on a pick. And there we have a cocktail I'm very satisfied with the look of, the fruit pastel. Let's give it a try, let's see how we did. That is tart, citrusy, unctuous and there's so much fruit flavour going on there. That is nostalgic. That tastes exactly, yeah, like those ice lollies I would have on a hot day in the summer. So sort of the blackberry and a little bit of passion fruit actually come through quite strongly at the beginning, but then that marries really nicely with the lemon lime mix we have going on here. But also the Cointreau and the citrusy element of the James gin we have here as well. That little bit of beetroot, that little umami note that the London Drizzle James gin brings, really adds that sort of just umami, beety gelatin aftertaste that fruit pastilles have. And I think the sugared rim here would be the perfect way to round off the sensation of eating a fruit pastil with the, of course, the sugar coating. There's so much cool stuff flavor-wise going on in here. And wow, that tastes exactly like a fruit pastil. Wow, I am very, very happy with that. That's phenomenal. But what's next? First made in 1969, Werther's Originals have a reputation of being more of an old person's or a grandparent's confectionery. An idea probably stemming from a series of television adverts that ran in the UK during the 1980s, which featured a grandfather giving Werther's Originals to his young grandson.
Butter candy. Well,
now, I think Werther's Originals absolutely slap, and I have bought them for myself before, which can only mean one of two things. Either I am to cause a paradox and somehow become my own grandfather through a series of frankly disconcerting time travel shenanigans, or I am secretly a senior citizen for reasons that are currently unknown even to myself. Now, regardless of paradoxes or subterfuge, I love Werther's Originals, so I thought I'd make a Werther's cocktail using the Brandy Alexander as a jumping off point. Now, Werther's Originals being a butter hard candy, you may be shocked to find out that as part of the base of the Werther's Original cocktail is going to be 1.5 ounces of a butterscotch liqueur. Now, of course, I did find as a Brandy Alexander that brandy, naturally, worked the best as the spirit base here. And as I happen to have some of this German brandy left over from my episode on The Princess Bride,
As you wish.
and as the Werther's Original is a German candy, I found myself with a very happy coincidence. So I shall be using 1.5 ounces of German brandy. And of course, if you don't want to go out of the way to get some German brandy, cognac or any other brandy is going to do just fine here. We are going to need 1 ounce of single cream. For the Americans, I believe the equivalent single cream is 50/50. Let's shake it up. Take a Nick and Nora or similar glassware, and likewise, double strain. Now, the colour's a little bit off, as you may expect, but that smells undeniably like a Werther's Original. So there we have it, the Werther's Original cocktail. I thought about doing a garnish for this, but in the Nick and Nora, I thought the cocktail looked almost perfectly just like a small hard candy. So I thought garnishless was the right way to go here. Whoa. That is... I was going to give some extensive flavour notes for this, but that's a Werther's Original. It's pure butterscotch, it's creamy, it's smooth. The brandy is giving it a lot of body, a lot of weight, but it's not overtaking it. This is a little bit drier, less sweet than the Werther's Original. An almost chocolatey aftertaste that the brandy is definitely contributing to here. That is spot on. Wow, so yeah, there we have it. That's the Werther's Original. That's fantastic. Wow, very, very happy with that. Now, the next cocktail we are going to look at is, we're really going to lean in hard to the whole nostalgic element of this video here. Rhubarb and Custard, a proper British classic. It pops up as a dessert on every pub menu and in every sweet shop worth its salt. And why not? It's brilliant, but it wasn't always this ubiquitous. Way back in the mists of time, in the cold, harsh mountains of Siberia and Western China, rhubarb was seen as a medicine. A laxative primarily, but that's beside the point.
Few people realize what tremendous power there is in one of those things.
But it wasn't until the 19th century that, probably in some bustling Victorian kitchen, that a true culinary visionary decided to pair it with a sweet custard that itself is a foodstuff so ancient that even the Romans were eating it.
Oh, your father was a woman!
Rhubarb and custard was an instant hit. It was cheap, it was cheerful, and it was delicious. It was, and still is, the taste of British childhood. Sometime in the 20th century, rhubarb and custard sweets were invented and they've been a classic ever since. This is going to be a cocktail made in two parts. Parts being, as you may well imagine, the rhubarb and the custard. Starting with the custard, we are going to add to a stirring glass 1.5 ounces of advocaat, which is a sort of egg yolk liqueur. Think of it almost like an alcoholic custard. We are then going to need 3/4 ounce of a vanilla syrup. And that's it for the custard part. Very, very simple. And then for the rhubarb part, we are going to want another 3/4 ounce of vanilla syrup into, this time, a shaking tin. We are going to want 1.5 ounces of a rhubarb and ginger gin. Not a gin liqueur this time, but a full strength gin, 1.5 ounces. And then to replicate the acidic quality of rhubarb, we are going to want 3/4 ounce of lemon juice. We are going to add some ice to both of these. And you are going to want to stir the custard and shake the rhubarb. And that's not a euphemism, I promise. You don't have to do both at the same time, but I'm doing it simply for speed purposes. Now you're going to want to take a suitably sized cocktail glass. Firstly, strain in the custard. Now, in theory, we should now be able to float the rhubarb portion of this cocktail on top of the custard, so we can achieve that dual tone colour that we're so familiar with on the sweets. What I'm first going to do is double strain the cocktail into the small tin, take our bar spoon, and ever so delicately try and pour the cocktail off the back, achieving that gradient. Get in. Yes. That is perfect. Oh, I'm so glad that worked. Now, as you can imagine, I don't really think any garnish is necessary for this cocktail. So there we have it. I'm happy to present the rhubarb and custard cocktail. Now, I know this looks so gorgeous and it feels almost criminal to interfere with the presentation of this at all, but I am going to mix the two parts of this cocktail together now, just so we can taste the whole thing at once. Let's give it a try. Cheers. It smells like rhubarb and custard. That is mad. That tastes not like a rhubarb and custard cocktail. That tastes exactly like a spoonful of rhubarb and custard pudding or one of those rhubarb and custard hard candies. That's phenomenal. I am very happy with this recipe. Whoa. It is tart, rhubarb, straight off the bat, vanilla, and then that changes in your mouth. The advocaat comes in and you get that smooth, sweet custard. This might just be some form of my magnum opus. Wow. I can like almost picture the scene sitting at the dinner table as a young boy having rhubarb and custard for pudding. That is so nostalgic. That is spot on, you've no idea. Not that, you know, I never try not to brag or anything, but that is one of the most spot on cocktails I've ever made on this channel. Whoa. I really don't know much more what there is to say on that. That tart, rhubarb, vanilla, and that changes into custard. The lemon juice is bringing a sort of acidity, just the exact perfect amount of acidity that you would expect to find in the rhubarb. Perfectly rounded, it's so fulfilling. That is pure nostalgia. So there we have it, 3 cocktails based on some nostalgic British sweets from my childhood and others. It's uncanny how close these all are. I hope you enjoyed this video every bit as much as I enjoyed making it. This one was really really fun to make. And I would highly recommend to make one or all of these at home if you have the opportunity. I really hope you enjoyed this surface level dive into the culture and history of British sweets. I really enjoy making these videos in a way that I can tie into some element of history or culture. That's really what makes it all worth it in my books. Summer is finally here, and any one of these is just absolutely perfect for this type of hot weather. If you enjoyed this video, why not consider liking, subscribing, commenting, all of those things that the YouTube algorithm absolutely loves. And truly, I can't wait to see you in the next one. There is always more to come. Cheers.